Let me tell you a story about a West African president who single-handedly ruined his reputation. And for this video, we'll be calling him X. This is X, just for this video. Follow me. Now, X found himself in the corridors of power in the Nigerian military at the time. And then by 1983, he decided to overthrow the then civilian government of Mr. Shehu Shagari and install himself as the head of state of Nigeria. Now, bear in mind, he came in because he wanted to fight corruption and indiscipline. Rather than actually fight the corruption that he said he wanted to fight, his government was actually blamed for human rights abuses of different kinds and further indiscipline within the government. Now, by 1985, he was overthrown. And then when the civilian rule returned to Nigeria in 1999, he continued to contest until 2015. When the Nigerian people decided in a consensus, to vote him as their new president. Now, this is where it gets very interesting. Now, in 2015, it almost seemed like a consensus. People loved X. They were convinced that X would change Nigeria and that they simply forgot about his past, his human rights abuses, the further indiscipline that he created within the balance of the structure of the Nigerian government. People didn't actually remember that. And then the consequences began to unfold. Follow me as I reveal them to you. Now, before X became president of Nigeria, by 2015, Nigeria was competing with the likes of China, Qatar, and Iran, Bangladesh, with a 7% growth in its economy at the time. That's over $100 billion worth of an economy. But then X became president. And this is what came. This is basically you'll be shocked at what happened. X came into power or into government in 2015, and immediately in 2016, this headline is from 31st August 2016. It says, Nigeria economy slips into recession. Immediately in 2016, the Nigerian economy slipped into recession with a 2% contraction from between April and June of that year. Now, the interesting thing is that there was a decline in growth by 2 consecutive quarters. Jesus Christ. But anyway, we would say that was because X was new in government in 2016, and we can't really blame him for that. But let's continue. Now, we were able to pull ourselves out of the recession somehow. It worked magic. I mean, there was a little padding here, a little padding there. They just kept padding and padding. But anyway, by 2020, which was a very terrible year for a lot of countries around the world, Nigeria faced a very terrible economic recession, which was the worst in 4 decades. Now, worst economic recession in 4 decades. Now, we could blame the collapse in oil prices, which occurred at that time due to COVID. Nobody was driving the cars, and oil was simply not a commodity that was in boost at the time. But let's go. So let's make a quick comparison on the debt portfolio of both presidents. Now, the former president by 2015 left an external debt of $7.3 billion, while he left a domestic debt of 8.84 trillion naira. Now, let's see what X left. By 2020, X left an external debt of $28.57 billion and a domestic debt of 16.02 trillion naira. Now, X didn't leave government in 2020. He left government in 2023, which means that his statistics may have increased just a little bit more. Now, that's interesting. Now, if we were to discuss some of the policies that X created in order to supposedly or allegedly help the situation of the country. For instance, one of them was that he decided to close the borders on certain products which he knew were essential for the thriving lives of the common man. And then he closed the border, expecting that the common man will simply go into agriculture and begin to produce these things. That wasn't how it worked for Nigerians. It has never worked that way. And Nigerians simply went into poverty, where the middle class are not really middle classes anymore. They are just the poor. Very interesting. X, come on, man. I wish I could get into more details because, for instance, some of the ministers and members of cabinet of X's government are currently under scrutiny for corruption. Not just corruption at the highest level, more than what has been seen in the past few years, in like 2 decades. Funny or interesting thing is that X came in under the guise of fighting corruption, and then it ended up even creating a pattern of government that was more into corruption, heavily into corruption. There are still some being investigated right now. Although there are some Nigerians who still believe that X is some sort of savior, a messiah of sorts. But, perhaps they are being, deluded of sort. But anyway, to each his own belief system, to each his own ideas. Don't forget to follow I Love Africa on all platforms, on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, as well as Facebook. I'm Victor.